There is a lot of lore hidden in the long dark, some of which is only recoverable when the lights turn back on. At the northernmost point of Lower Great Bear along the highway is a desolate place filled with crumbling infrastructure, abandoned industry, and the remains of a beacon of hope. The Desolation Point region hides the memories of the previous occupants and travelers that are nowhere to be found in the quiet apocalypse. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like for the algorithm so I can keep making them. I should mention that the first half of this video was recorded while I was sick. The second half should sound better as my sinuses have returned to normal. I apologize for the lower quality in the first half. File name log0236. Quake activity getting worse. There's a fine crack forming along the base of the structure. We need to bring out a crew again to fix it, and soon. None of the little quakes have knocked the lamp too bad, and we've had zero downtime. Thank God. File name log0157. Water is leaking through the floor around the drive mechanism up top. The ceiling up there looks shot. I went down to Hibernia the other day to see if they had a bit of something I could patch it with, but no luck. A useless bunch. Like always. But the fellows there have their own problems, by the looks of it. File name log0162. The main drive jammed up last night, but no damage to the lens or other components as far as I can tell. A lot of grease and some work with the mallet got it going again. That's the third time this month we had a breakdown at night. Seas are rough enough this time of year. Anyone coming around the point doesn't need us making it harder on them. File name log0171. An odd fellow turned up yesterday, banging on my door. He was frozen solid, and said he'd come through the old mine, up the coast from the town site. I warmed him by the fire, and gave him hot tea. Some of my last. He had dark stories about goings-on around the rest of the island, and claimed he was heading north up the highway. The worst of things since the collapse hadn't reached us down here at the point yet, he said. I warned him about the damage to the road and bridges he was going to run into, but it didn't faze him. He was sleeping right there on the damn floor in front of the stove when I left. When I came back down after working some on the lens, he was gone. Before I can discuss these buffer memories, I need to note their file names. A while back, I mentioned how the file names for the buffer memories sometimes don't make sense. While the order I read them in is how they are listed in the fandom wiki, I don't know if this is how the game lists them. Either way, for the Lighthouse buffer memories, the names have numbers, but they seem to be out of order. This is relevant because the final entry tells us the collapse had already occurred. This is important because even prior to the global economic event known as the collapse, Great Bear Island had already faced decades of local economic decline. There is no telling when these memories were written and the time in between them, but at the very least, the final one is from post-collapse times. This is also important because of the mention of Hibernia. The whale processing plant just down the road from the lighthouse appears to be in complete ruin in the game from being abandoned. Depending on if all of the lighthouse memories were written in post-collapse times or not, that would tell us Hibernia would close during these times. Judging by the decline of the interior, it looks like it has been closed for a long time. Looking at the history of whaling in Canada, whaling as an industry ended in the 1960s, but continues on a very small scale among Indigenous peoples. Of course, there is always the possibility that due to the circumstances in the world of the Long Dark, some historical events and societal changes could have happened later or not at all. Another important thing to discuss is the type of device these memories are written on. The Lighthouse memories were on a laptop and the Hibernia memories were on a desktop. While the age and appearance of tech on Great Bear Island can be confusing, I generally assume that a laptop means the memories are newer and a desktop means that they could be from anywhere between the 90s to present day. Both types of computers are blocky and look like they weigh a ton, so it is always difficult to tell unless some context clues are provided in the memories. It makes it even harder to tell when Carter Dam, a place that closed in the 90s, has the same desktop computers that the Briarhouse maintenance yard has, which operated through the start of the Quiet Apocalypse. As for the memories themselves, they repeat some of the same information present in other sets of memories. The seismic activity is a recurring threat to infrastructure, and maintenance is a constant pain. Based on how often the drive mechanism for the lighthouse seemed to have problems, it makes me lean towards believing these memories are from post-collapse times. Due to dwindling supply lines and the rising cost of fuel for shipping, everything had to be stretched until it either broke down or stopped working completely. This happening to the lighthouse would be devastating, as noted by the lighthouse attendant. The last buffer memory is very interesting, as it gives yet another glimpse into the post-collapse desperation faced by the remaining residents of the island. This one, however, seems more distressing than the others. The stranger arrives at the lighthouse, nearly frozen to death. The details they provide are some of the most grim within the lore about post-collapse Great Bear Island. Like in the buffer memories of Pleasant Valley, the worst of the collapse's effect had not reached certain areas, such as the Point. I mentioned this in a previous video about how the in-game names for regions may not be their real names, but we know for certain that Desolation Point was referred to as a point. This stranger also came from the coastal town site through the cave that we used to get to the Crumbling Highway to Desolation Point, meaning the Crumbling Highway, also known as the Old Island Connector, had fallen apart before this. The same goes for the highway in Desolation Point, as well as the bridge at the very end. The dark stories the stranger brought with them seemed to indicate just how grim the situation was in Lower Great Bear. After this, they were making their way up north, most likely to an area of Great Bear Island referred to as Up Island. The state of the island in this time period shows just how economically strained the island was. The highway was once vital for connecting smaller settlements to places like Port Mary, which would allow for resources to reach them. Great Bear Island must have been truly economically dead by this point. It makes me wonder if any government was left to govern the island. My guess is there was none left in these post-collapse times. From Manny to Greg. I just landed at Great Bear Island. Deep Wild flew me out from the mainland by float plane. Should be quite the trip. Remember, I'll be out of reach for the next 2 weeks. If it's all they promised, I'll be a new man when I get back. From Deep Wild Adventure to Manny Douglas. We are sorry to inform you that due to ongoing instability in our fuel supply chain, we will have to retime your planned extraction from our deep forest experience on majestic Great Bear Island. Please be aware it may take up to 7 business days before we can reschedule. Thank you for your understanding and patience. Deep Wild. From Manny to Deep Wild Adventure. I was told exit plans for this trip were guaranteed. Gold-plated exit, you told me. What happened to that promise? When can I expect a response? From Manny to Greg. Greg, when you get this, contact my lawyer and fill them in on what's happening out here. I can't get a response from Deep Wild, and at this point I don't expect one. From Manny to Greg. I'm still holed up with some locals. I'm not sure they've ever left this island or would even know how to. They seem to be losing patience with me. Have you had any luck? The set of buffer memories found in Hibernia are from a mainlander named Manny Douglas who visited Great Bear Island for a special trip. Based on the name of the company that flew him to the island, Deep Wild, and the name of the trip, called Deep Forest Experience, I can only guess it was a nature experience focusing on the wild side of the island. Looking back to the buffer memories authored by Anika Longmire of Milton, her husband Jason worked as some kind of nature tour guide. While this was definitely after the collapse, it seemed there was still some interest in visiting and exploring Great Bear Island for its natural wonders. As dead as the island seemed to be at this time, it still attracted some visitors. The trip also guaranteed he'd be a new man afterwards, whatever that means. While I can't say he got what he was looking for, it certainly seemed like he got more than he bargained for. The second buffer memory is Deep Wild telling Manny that his planned trip off the island was delayed due to an unstable fuel supply chain. This is a telltale sign that Manny's trip was after the collapse. When it came to his return home, he couldn't get an answer from Deep Wild. This is rather concerning how much these types of companies are risking to operate in such turbulent economic times. Even Will's Jackrabbit Remote Transport Company was struggling, and it existed solely to service remote places like Great Bear Island. Even in these buffer memories, we still see that Hibernia is in operation. I'm rather confused about how the place looks like it is one moderate-sized earthquake away from being knocked down, but it was in operation not long before the first flare. With the time frame between the collapse and the quiet apocalypse being about 10 years, there must have been some heavy damage to the building to have it end up like it is in survival mode. As for what ended up happening to Manny, there is nothing to tell us whether he made it off the island. The chances are low, but it is possible he got stranded on the island just in time to witness the first flare. Every set of buffer memories has something unique to them. For Desolation Point, they gave us a glimpse into how dire things were getting just before the quiet apocalypse. It seemed the worst had yet to reach the point at this time, but we can see how fractured the highway was. We can also see a desperate islander trying to escape the situation south of the point. While fuel supply issues are mentioned in other places of the lore, this particular instance shows us the direct effects on a traveler visiting the island. I can't imagine allowing a visitor to be stranded would help the economic situation the island was facing. Unfortunately, when it comes to the lore for Desolation Point, these buffer memories are all we have for this little corner of Great Bear Island. Even if this apocalypse is here to stay, every long dark tunnel has light at the other end. All one can hope is to live long enough to see the beauty in between the darkness and the light. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like for the algorithm so I can keep making them.